appropriate for us to get started now with our first architecture design talk of the new semester. As everyone is aware, the Architecture and Design Talk is a regular event here at UNIMAS, Faculty of Built Environment Architecture program, whereby various experts and members of the faculty join us to speak about their area of expertise. And so I'm very pleased to welcome all of you, students at the Faculty of Built Environment, and also anyone from outside UNIMAS. If they have joined us, you're most very welcome for this next 1 hour of architecture design talk with our very special guest today, who is Professor Architect Dr. Julaihi Wahid. And for those of us here in the faculty, we are no stranger to Prof. Julaihi. He is the founding member of our program. But prior to that, he had a long and distinguished career, having received in 2019 the Architecture Education Award from Lembaga Architect Malaysia, one of only 3 previous people to win this prestigious award from LAM. He began his career with a certificate of civil engineering in 1979, moving from there into the field of architecture with a diploma from the University of Technology Malaysia in '82, followed by a long sojourn in the United States of America, getting first his bachelor's of architecture and then master's of architecture in Washington State University and Kansas State University, respectively. In 1992, he began his PhD studies, finally achieving his doctorate from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne in a PhD thesis titled Physical Changes and the Relationship to Social-Cultural Factors in Urban Housing. Prof. Julaihi's current areas of research are housing policy and development, urban design, urban management, and urban morphology, architectural technology, and Nusantara architecture and its sustainable development. So he is more than qualified to speak to us for the next hour on the topic of urban design. I hope that we can all give him our full attention and save any questions that you might have for the end of the session, where we will have time for Q&A, inshallah. So with that, I'd like to turn over the session now to Prof. Julaihi. Prof, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Brother Zain Abidin. And I would like to convey my sincere thanks and honor for me to be here. Firstly, I would like to thank the Faculty of Architecture, the Dean, Prof. Nur Akmal, our head department, Dr. Atta, course coordinator, Puan Donna Rose, and all the staffs and the students. I appreciate you give me this opportunity to talk a little bit on urban design. And since urban design is part of my discipline, I try to condense and try to summarize as simple as possible for the students to comprehend the meaning of urban design and how to start urban design. Because urban design, as I mentioned earlier in many of my talks in various places, especially in Indonesia, it is sometimes being confused with urban planning. Without further ado, I would like to begin with a brief history of urban design, since I'm given 1 hour to condense my talk for my dear students and also my colleague. I try to briefly introduce a little bit about how urban design begins in the world. Urban design, as I mentioned here, is it started in the 50s. It was started in the States. Yeah, in the United States of America, they are very concerned about the quality of the urban environment. Actually, the cities grows in America is just like a mushroom. Yeah, after rain in the tropics, you'll see most big cities like Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, and so on. But during that time, most of the cities are growing not according to what we are expecting. There are so many, a lot of disadvantages in terms of physical growth of the city, and slum areas occur, some places dilapidation, streets are dirty, and so on. That's the reason why urban design started to exist in the 50s. In the 50s, in Malaysia, we have nothing in the 50s because we gained independence in 1957. And in Sarawak, in the 50s, it's still jungle and only, if I'm not mistaken, shop houses at Gambia Street and shop houses at Java Lane that are what happened in the 50s. And in the 70s, also in Malaysia, nothing happened. But in the States, in the 50s, if you look at the history of cities as mentioned by our brother Zain in human settlement in the last lecture, how the city grows in the States. In the 50s, it is already what happened in Kuala Lumpur right now. You see, if you look back at how the city grow in the States and in some other areas, it is far too, lot of differences. And urban design extended in the 70s. Why in the 70s? In the 70s, that was what we term as the hippie nation after the Vietnam War in the States. And then after the baby boom in the 50s. And then after the liberal revolution in the States in the 60s, if you look at the movie, yeah, Rebel Without a Cause, you'll see James Dean. I think some of you interested in that, especially McLeod. I think you love James Dean. And you'll see how the people think at that time. And then this will influence the cities in the 70s. And during that time, people trying to think about how to make the city livable, how to make the city as preferable as what we have in our mind. Although during that time, cities were more focusing on the buildings, which we consider as a civic design. And then most of these beautiful buildings were designed according to what Thomas Jefferson had in mind. You see, Thomas Jefferson wanted America to be built according to Greek revival. Why Greek revival? Greek revival because America adopted democracy. And then America believed in democracy. Democracy started in Greece. So that's why they take Greek revival as an architecture and impose it in America as a new nation to run concurrently with the idea of Thomas Jefferson. If I'm not mistaken, he's the 16th president of America. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Zain. And he imposed that as part of the syllabus in architecture school also. And during this stage, in 1850, during the Chicago Exposition, we call it Chicago Exposition, there was a beautiful city movement in America. During that time, the beautiful city movement in America The two persons who plays a very important role in that area during that time was Frederick Olmsted and Daniel Burnham. Daniel Burnham and Frederick Olmsted, both of them are planners and landscape architects as well as architects. They try to combine these ideas and try to produce what a city should be. However, it is not implemented. Only in the 80s, only in the 80s, the subject of urban design started to be introduced in the university. If I'm not mistaken, the earliest one was University of Milwaukee, University of Washington, and other universities started to follow. For example, the University of California in Berkeley, Kansas State University in Manhattan, Arizona University in Tucson, Arizona. And these are the few universities that started to introduce urban design in their discipline under the umbrella of architecture. This is a brief history of urban design. Why urban design? Because if we relate to the history of urban design, there are three schools of thought that practice urban design, that follow urban design, as well as that respect and believe that urban design is part of the factors to be inserted or to be included in architecture program. In the States, the Chicago School of Thought. The Chicago School of Thought, it is not new in the States. If you look later on, like Burgess, Almond, and a few other scholars who focus very much on the design of the cities. This school of thought, the Chicago School of Thought, who focus very much on the design of cities, they try to comprehend again and try to look back. If you want to design a city in one mass area, it is not successful. If you look at Broadacre City by Frank Lloyd Wright, it is not done. Contemporary City by Le Corbusier, it is not done. If you look at the city plan designed by Le Antoine, it is not done. Only a certain part of Paris, a certain part of Washington, D.C., it is done. Later on, you'll see some of the examples. And then, with respect to that, the British School of Thought, they are more towards the historical. The British School of Thought, if you still remember inter landscape design, you ask Mr. Zain, the British, they are these people, they're romantics. They still follow the romantic English landscape and so on. So they try to integrate the historical and the romantic landscape of the city in landscape of design in the city. Later on, you'll see part of the townscape by Gordon Cullen. However, the Bologna School of Thought that was in Europe, they focus more on the classical. Because in Italy, if you look at the Renaissance, you look at all those, the progression of the architecture, the classical orders and so on in Europe, in Rome and whatsoever, they try to preserve that. So by looking at the three schools of thought, I want you to be careful. If you want to integrate all of them, it is good. Don't try to separate and focus so much on one of them. But I just introduced this to you, at least you know what's happening in the world in terms of architecture, okay? And the city beautiful movement in Chicago, it was started in 1850. During the exposition in Chicago, they tried to introduce these classical orders. If you look at the pictures, a lot of pictures, the historical pictures of the exposition in Chicago in 1850, George Washington unveiled a screen of the curtain showing part of this classical orders. What does this message try to reach us? It shows that, okay, follow this, you look at this, this is the true architecture. This is what going on with the world during that time, and then how it influenced our thought, our syllabus, and so on. Okay, and since the discipline has been disintegrated, yeah, civil engineering, architecture, urban planning, landscape architecture, so on and so forth. Architects, they're talking about my building. Look at my building. You see, like Frank Lloyd Wright, he shows his building. Le Corbusier, he's proud of his building. IMP, he's proud of his building. So as engineers, they are focusing on bridges, infrastructure, they're focusing on all those tangible structure. And planners, they're focusing on the two-dimensional, how to locate land use planning and so on. So the purpose of urban design is to integrate architects, engineers, planners, landscape designers, and unite all these people. And then try to introduce the syllabus a little bit on infrastructure, a little bit on planning principles, landscaping, streets, buildings, and in the end, it became one discipline by itself. So by 1980s, urban design can be said, giving birth to a new discipline. Yeah? You know why? Only now, during the Rio Summit, people realize that during the Rio Summit, they're talking about the quality of the environment, but they did not talk about the urban environment. They're talking about natural environment. Only Saskia Sassen, after he introduced a lot of this encyclopedia on architecture, urban design, landscape, and so on, then it became part and parcel of the issues being talked by the all these ministers and politicians in the Rio Summit. And in the Rio Summit, it leads to the World Economic Forum. Only recently, the World Economic Forum 4.0, they talk about cities. Before that, they don't give a damn. You see? Because only now the people realize that we need to talk about urban ecology, not just natural ecology. Because urban ecology, it is the habitat of the modern man, especially after the 21st century. All right? So this is so much, a little bit about urban design. And the definition of urban design started to grow. Yeah? Berkeley, in his writing, he said that urban design bridge among the disciplines. So they try to combine in terms of planning, in terms of architecture, in terms of engineering, in terms of urban landscape and so on. They try to combine. And by combining all these disciplines, they produce urban design. So urban design, if you want to study urban design, you have to know a little bit about infrastructure. You know a little bit about drainage. You know a little bit about the ecology of urban environment. Of course, architects, you know about the importance of building, how you design the building, how the building respect the context. And Hamid Shivani, he produced a book on the planning on these urban design principles. And then to him, he emphasized on the quality of the environment. In order to understand the quality of environment, you have to know a little bit of a few principles of urban design, which I mentioned later on. Okay, that is Hamid Shivani. And Antoniette, in his book, The Design of the Built Environment, he still mentioned about the aesthetic that has been portrayed by the architects in the building, respecting the ground level in terms of the plaza, in terms of pedestrian, in terms of the context, in terms of the all these physical requirements of the human habitat. So it become, he said that it become a physical entity that you need to respect when you design. As an architect who want to focus on urban design, you try carefully look at it. Yeah, but David Simon, this is my professor when I was in Kansas. Now he's still alive. The rest all gone. My professor, I think David Simon by now is 92 years old, but still active. If you open his newsletter in academia, he's one of the leading reviewer and also the author. He said that quality of environment that benefits the human and all life and activities of the urban areas. So generally, urban design focus on the quality of the urban environment. How to increase the quality of urban environment? You know why? Because urban environment, we do not know who owns the environment. It is not the city council. Yeah, it is not the building owner. The urban environment is owned by the people on the street. And that is why Jane Jacob, in her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, she said that people are strangers on the street. These strangers, they look after the safety of the street. These strangers are the user of the street. And these strangers create a place on the street. So how are you going to design for these strangers? Then we do not know. These are the things you as an architect try to look carefully at all these issues. All right? And if you recap all those and try to summarize according to what we have in mind, yeah? Hamid Sivani, he summarized this. He said that the street is where we use for shopping. The street is where we use for eating. We in Malaysia, it is not so common that you see people eating on the street. But if you go to Paris, you go to United States, the people use the plaza to have their lunch. In Paris, the street cafe is very popular. Okay, the street is also used for resting. People taking the sun bathing and so on. The street is also used for the people to go and for work. Yeah? Where it becomes the vital signs of healthy downtown. How if there is no people on the street? So the city is dead. You see? I did mention in the Lost City lectures in the human settlement why the Lost City happened. So because of there are no people, there are no activities. So how are you going to design the street, the cities that can be used by the people? All right. And some people, even in Malaysia, yeah, I was asked by a few lecturers from UKL, from UTM about urban design. Some of them, they look at urban design as planning, urban planning and town planning and urban planning. Some look at urban design as space syntax alone. Some thought that urban design is only pedestrianization. And then some think that at a larger scale, oh, urban design is a city design. However, there are those who are looking at urban design as a place making, how to create a place in urban design, in urban areas, in urban contexts. And then some even focusing on urban infrastructure, urban services. So which are you focusing on? But as an architect that interested in urban design, all of the above you have to consider. Urban planning, the planning principles in terms of zoning, in terms of land use planning, in terms of the model of cities. Later on, I showed a little bit. Yeah. So you have to know about this as an urban designer. And space syntax, you go back to Hillier and Hansen. Yeah. Hillier and Hansen, who introduced the syntax analysis and being integrated by the people in urban areas for the space syntax. For example, Dr. Sharifah, now she is working with DBKL, and she's also the advisor to DBKL, and also Professor Suhana, also interested in space syntax at UTN, and these are some of the urban designers in Malaysia, and also TK planners, or Teo Kauchin, TKC, if I'm not mistaken. He's also doing something on space syntax. And some, they start with pedestrianization. Yeah? To make the city alive, to make the city interesting for the people to come and play, like Jakarta. They stop at one corner of the blocks, and they close the other corner of the block to stop the cars, and then they create car-free area, and they introduce the activities and become a lively urban areas. They start by that. So it exists in some of the cities. Okay? So these are some of the early ideas of urban planning introduced by Burgess. Burgess is a Chicago school of thoughts, and he believes in how the city grow, and he believed that in order to produce a good city, these are the models that Burgess introduced. Yeah, this is a centric model. And then during that time, we cannot. I argue with Dr. Rahmat Azam Shah from USM and Dr. Ali about this theory, because to me, Burgess theory, it was introduced in 1923, where America was segregated between the black and whites. But now America is integrate black and whites, you see. Then this theory, this centric theory of city models, it exists because of those agenda and how it grows. The same with Wahid model. Yeah, Wahid model, he developed from centric model, and he introduced a wedge where this zoning with respect to the urban planning just now, and how the zoning being introduced in the city. When we adapt this in the developing world like Malaysia, it doesn't work. Please bear with me. It doesn't work in Malaysia, because Malaysia, the culture are different. We are not segregated as in America in the 20s. Yeah, even now America, they are integrating. If you look at the modern cities in Western Virginia, it is not the same. If you look at the celebration in Florida, it is not the same. Yeah. Then this another one is Harris and Almond. He's using the nucleus model. This one can work in Malaysia. If you look at how Putrajaya become the feeder city to Kuala Lumpur, and each of this growth later on, there is no border. This is part of the urban planning contribution in urban design. And these are the space syntax. The space syntax in urban design, they are looking at the integration of streets, as how the activities of the streets being integrated and how it is connected by the blocks of building. Because if you look at the city comprised of the streets, the lanes, the building blocks, the open space, and the activities. And then the activities, how it is started. Is it organic, like kucing, or is it grid like modern Bangkok? Modern Bangkok, the city is grid system. That's why modern Bangkok, the traffic jam is very bad. It's just like the design of the street in America. They use Washington, Jefferson, and then they put first street, second street, third street, fourth street until 42nd Street. And then at each of these blocks, there is a traffic light. So that is why the city is dead. The city became the vehicular path for cars. So once the traffic, the traffic is congested, we widen the street. When we widen the street, we increase the number of cars. And then the number of cars increase, become traffic jam again. We widen again the street. You'll see in Ho Chi Minh City, the street is about 7 lanes in the new Ho Chi Minh City. And the new part of Shenzhen in China, the new Makita city of Manila, it become another nightmare because of the street. And then how you want to make the street walkable? How you want to make the street pedestrianized street? This is how the people use the space syntax to connect and to do the interconnectivity of the blocks of each of these streets. This is part of urban design. And then this is what I mentioned to you. Some cities, they close the street. So when they close the street, they want to make the street livable. In some of the cities like Copenhagen, even Newcastle upon Tyne in England, Granger Market, and even in London, some of the street like the Oxford Street, they close the street for the pedestrian. And then in Jakarta, they introduce car-free street, car-free zone area. And then even in Medan, they close the street during night time. Then they introduce a night market to make the city livable. This is what another term is, livable city. How to make the city livable. All right? And do not just think about pedestrianization. Although there are some students, I read 2 PhD students just doing pedestrianization, but very good work. How the pedestrianization increase the economy of the street, increase the safety of the people on the street, increase the beautification of the facade of the street, and then increase the safety of the people using the street. Okay, this is part of urban design. And some even improve the street by introducing greeneries, beautiful landscapes, and so on. And then introduce sculptures, and then some they close the street by using bollards. You see, using bollards, they introduce some of this signage, graffiti, as in Melbourne. In Melbourne, the streets, they use street arts to beautify the streets. Then you see how they integrate the blind wall of the facade of the street to integrate with the inside and the outside of the building. Some in America, they introduced this. They call it placemaking. Placemaking was propagated by Edward Rife, Roger Transick, and David Simmons, Christina Nordin. Some of these scholars, they are really involved, if you read the articles by Christina Nordin and David Simmons, and also Edward Rife, Place and Placelessness, and Roger Transick, the Lost Cities, they really focus on how to make the city become a place for the people. They don't want the city to be dead by 5 p.m. like in England. 5 p.m. all the shop closed. The people go inside the building. Only the park is open. The park is the only place for people to gather because of the weather outside is very cold. So how to make the street lively. These are part of the urban design task. Read some of the articles by David Simmons, Christina Nordin, Roger Transick, Edward Rife. And They even introduced this theory. The theory is known as phenomenology of place. If you read at David Simon's book, yeah, the life world, he's talking about phenomenology. But phenomenology, it is not the phenomena of the science according to the Carl Sagan alone. Yeah, phenomenology is a study of phenomena experienced by the people. This is what we're talking about. And he believed that the urban system that influenced the phenomenology of the place. What are the urban system of urban design? Later on, I explain it a little bit. Okay. I try to catch up with the time because the time I'm given only 1 hour. All right. These are the urban system that contribute to, yeah, that contribute to, oh, sorry. They contribute to placemaking. The urban system, you have to look thoroughly the politics of the city. The politics is not the politics that we are talking about, like what we are having in Malaysia. The politics is the governance of the city. Who is the governor of the city? Like in New York, in 80s, when I was in the States, 1982, 84, Edward Koch was the governor of New York. And then he spent so much money on the beautification of New York, especially the Bronx area. New York was almost bankrupt. Then the people grumble and so on about these issues because I knew about this because we studied the urban development in the States during that time, and then they touched about a little bit about the politics of urban system in a city, and then how the governance of the city in terms of running a city. Who is the people in the city council? They have their own chart. You see, the engineering departments, the building departments, the landscape departments, the health department, the economics department, those who took charge of the shops, warung, and so on. And then how to manage this. This is the politics of urban system in urban areas. You have to understand. And the management in terms of the services in the city, excuse me. The disposal of the garbage. When do the disposal of the garbage? How frequent do you collect? And then where is the dumping ground of the garbage? How are you going to utilize this garbage? Like now, we recycle and so on and so forth. And then they become a money to the governance. And then in terms of land use, the land use in terms of urban system, which area do you categorize as residential, industrial, agriculture, and so on? And then by judging at the land use, it also relates with the zoning of the area. The zoning of the area, do not zone it like what has been mentioned by Jane Jacobs. One stretch of block, all hardware. One stretch of block, all these services. And it must be integrated. How you integrate? Although we don't want the heavy industry inside the city, but it happens if you go to Tokyo, if you go to Osaka, you go to Korea, the heavy industries in the city. But the industry is very clean. And that is back to management and back to politics. You see? Then design. How you go to the design? What stage do you want to go to design?
Halo?
Halo?
Kalau bisa godok-godok siapa sama?
Siapa nih?
PJ-nya?
Ya?
Oh,
Halo? Siapa Fitri ni?
Never mind, Prof. You just go ahead.
Yeah. Then urban control. The urban control in terms of floor area ratio, in terms of setback, in terms of all the do's and don'ts according to the regulations and the UBBL, according to all other requirements imposed by the city council. Remember that. And the underlying structures. The underlying structures, it includes the housing, the urban poverty, and the informal sectors. You cannot neglect the informal sectors in the city. Because although these people, they produce black money. Why we call it black money? Because these people don't pay taxes. Yeah? They don't pay tax. That's why the city council don't like them. They don't pay tax. If they pay tax, the council love them. You see, like you go to across the rivers at Petrajaya, along the street, people jual goreng pisang, jual popia, and so on. These are the informal sectors. These people don't pay tax. They don't pay LHDN. You see, these are the underlying structures that we shouldn't forget about what's going on with the city system. By integrating all these are the components of urban system that contribute to urban design. Remember that for the student. You cannot neglect urban governance. You cannot neglect the management because, for example, in Pulau Pinang, the rent control, it is managed by the city council. Okay, you cannot neglect the land use because even though now, like in Sarawak itself, the land use from native customary right land that was formerly agriculture is being converted into commercial. We cannot neglect that. It happens. Then the design. What are the focus of the design that you wanted to do? Are you going for revitalization? Are you going for urban renewal? Yeah. Are you going for urban redevelopment? These are the things that you have to consider in your approach. Later on, I move further. So we are here. How do we start? For the first year student, second year student, third year student, how do we start? Now, I go back to the development approaches. Are we going for urban redevelopment? If we go for urban redevelopment, it can be new redevelopment or it can be additional to the existing. But we don't do urban renewal. Yeah? Urban renewal, we bulldoze, we erase, we demolish, and then we rebuild. Even Singapore, yeah? KIV for the Marina area, the old part of Singapore, excuse me, if you go to Geylang and so on, yeah, Geylang Street, they don't do urban renewal. They do urban revitalization. They revitalize the building, improve the activities, improve the facade, improve the pedestrian area, they improve the landscaping to give life to the city. This is what we are always doing. Most of us, we do urban revitalization. We revitalize. We don't go for renewal. Okay? Remember that. And what focus of design that we go for? As I mentioned to you, the school of thoughts that I mentioned earlier. Are we going for conservation? When you go for conservation, what to preserve? What to preserve is tangible and intangible conservation. And what to preserve, what level of preservation that you want to preserve? You have to look back. Are you going to the extent of SPNEA? That is the Society of Preservation according to the North England Antiquities? SPNEA. The SPNEA, these people are very conservative when it comes to conservation. Even a piece of brick, they want to follow that piece of brick according to how it was made during the colonial time. Are we ready for that? Can we do that? No, we couldn't do that. Even the conservation of Fort Ellis, you see what happened? In the conservation of Fort Margareta, what happened? What level of conservation did we go for? So you must look at, do you conserve the community? If you conserve the community, how to conserve the community? That is the reason why some university in the States, under urban design, they introduce community and urban design. They don't go for big cities, they go for community. They try to blend the living area of the community, because some of the cities in the state, for example, the city of Wisconsin, the city of Manhattan, yeah, the city of Cambridge for MIT and also Harvard, they conserve the city to make the community, to make the community not forgettable when the development in that area is being developed. They want to take consideration of the community in that area. How to conserve the community? The first thing is look at the unit level. After the unit level, then you look at the neighborhood level. After you look at the neighborhood level, then you look at the town or city level. By looking at the unit level, you look at the house of Mrs. Smith. Is her house at the city of Wisconsin good or not? So the council will give some lending money to her to improve the condition, and then she will introduce, might be bed and breakfast or a small cafe for the student in the campus, so that he got some money to do to maintain the house as well as to pay the city council. This is how the American did it. Yeah, if you go to the development in Wisconsin, even in Tampa, Florida, yeah, they introduced this kind of to preserve and conserve the community. And the development focus, where and how to focus, where do you focus the development? Are you focusing on the building? Are you focusing on the street? Are you focusing on the waterfront? Are you focusing on the whole area of the neighborhood? Then you go for the study. Later on, you take all this concern, and then you look later on how it affects your design. And then what type of character that you want to introduce? By looking at the house of Mrs. Smith in Wisconsin, the house was built in the 60s according to the old American town. And what are the character? The arches, the facade, the pediment, the entrance to the house, the doors, the staircase, and so on. And then how to blend with the landscaping, how to blend with the neighbors, how to blend with the whole street, and then might be the cafe and so on. Then try to make appropriate physical form. And if you want to maintain the whole stretch of the facade of the street according to what is there, then you go for the preservation of the facade. Okay, and then you look also at the economic factors. You look also at the architectural factors. You look also at the cultural factors. What are the culture of the people here? Okay, don't try to assimilate what has been done in other area. You copy it blindly and put in your design. Forget about it. Yeah. I guess if you do that, you are not sensitive to the urban ecology. All right. Then, how to interpret cities? This is a very good approach. Yeah? I still respect Kevin Lynch. He introduced all these elements. If you read his book, The Image of the City, although the book was written in the 60s, yeah? But the book is still valid for us to use it as the elements to do the analysis. I use this to complement with my other techniques, yeah, with what Professor Ray Weisenberger, my professor also, yeah, he introduced this visual analysis technique that he complement the elements of entrance to Kevin Lynch, apart from path, landmarks, node, district, boundary, and edges. He introduced entrance. He said that might be Kevin Lynch forgot about entrance. So we took that. We took that as a compliment. We're not going to laugh at him, but that is a compliment. Although he just passed away in February 2018 at the age of 93 years old. Most of these people, they live long, you know. I don't know how they live long. I may ask Mr. Zain, because he knows the secret of these Western people. They can live up to 92 years old, 93 years old, but still alive and kicking, like Professor David Simon. He is so active in writings, in conference, in giving lectures, and then visiting places all the place around the world. So the secret is with Mr. Zain. We will ask the secrets later on. All right, Kevin Lynch. These are the image of the cities. By understanding the image, why I use this? By understanding the image, you try to extract one by one. The path. The path is not only the laluan yang kamu lalui. The path can be the street, can be the lanes, can be illegal path, can be a legal path. And then what is the significance of this path to the vistas? What is the significance of this path to the axis? What is the significance of this path to the space syntax as being introduced by those people like Hillier and Henson just now? And then the landmarks. Why the landmarks? It can be building. It can be a place where you meet people. The nodes, why the nodes are alive? Why certain nodes it is empty? And then why the district of this area become a district that become a complement and over-dependent on each other? And what limit the development of this area? Where is the edge of this area? Where is the boundary of this area? So these are some of the examples that I use to show to my student. These are the paths being used by Kevin Lynch, and then quite a number of those who doing urban design. They respect the idea about the street. Like in America, the demarcation of the streets are very clear. Where is the private area? Where is the semi-private area? Where is the public area? Where is the semi-public area? And then for us, this is not demarcated, because like us, space negotiation is very important in our culture. Yeah. So by understanding this, I want you to look again. Okay. And this is what I mean by the private, semi-private, public, semi-public. In Western culture, it is very, very clear. Okay. And landmarks, it can be a place of interest, a place of reference. It can be buildings, it can be statue, and it can be where you meet a friend. Dia cakap dengan kawan, jumpa aku dekat nasi kandar line clear. He knows. Dan you kata, jumpa aku dekat gerai bawah pokok. He knows. It can be a landmark. It's not necessary to be a building. It's not necessary to be a sculpture. It can be some significant activities of the people in the urban areas. It can be a landmark. And some people Oh, this is the edge of the boundaries. This is the edge of my site. How am I going to?
Prof, we've got about 5 minutes left, yeah?
Oh no, I get another 10 minutes, man. Give me 10 minutes. These are some of the questions that the student asked. So how are you as an architect to take advantage of the edge to design your building or to design the urban areas? And notes, how to make the notes significant, how to make the notes interesting, how to combine the streets, the path, and the landmarks with the notes. And this district itself, it can be as small as a campus of UNIMAS, it can be as small as the faculty of architecture, it can be DBKS or it can be DBKU, how, at what perimeter it covers. All right, the axis in urban areas, look at the axis, why the axis is important, where do I include the axis to make my design interesting, and what are the significance of the axis to complement the facade of the building on the left and on the right. And then this is the axis done by the Daniel Burnham for the city of Washington, D.C. on the planning of the urban planning. That is during the Chicago Exposition last time. And the vistas, the vista, it can be combined along with the axis. And the entrance, some people use pailu, in the Chinese term for pailu, and the Japanese also they use a kind of entrance. The Indonesian they call the gang, gang masuk, and then Malaysia pintu gerbang. But some people they just use urban parks as an entrance to the area. By going into this urban park, you know this is the entrance to Sussex, to the city of Newcastle, and so on and so forth. So be aware about this, not necessarily to be something physical. And plaza, the plaza, how to convert the plaza into the place for the people in the street, to not use for vehicles, and then to make it lively. This is a part of the elements of the urban design. And then food vendors, according to William White, the small life of urban space. He studied this, how he used the direct observation and participant observation in his study to do the study of the urban space, where he said that where there are foods, there are people. And then the people will come and buy the food. And even in Malaysia, we introduced the pasar malam and so on. How to integrate all these activities to give the economic sustainability to the community that you conserve. Remember that. Then some include urban space. Then the urban space can be the urban park at a micro scale, at a larger scale, and also the significance of the patriotic open space in each country. In Medan, in Penang, in Washington, D.C., in Jakarta, we have this patriotic, democratic space that people use for celebration and so on. And we in Malaysia, Indonesia, this is our culture. The urban space, we negotiate, we provide the urban space. People can come and go and do trading and so on, even though these places are specifically for certain activities. All right, the street furniture, don't forget, the people on the street, they need to rest, they need to sit, they need all this information, they need lightings, they need trash can, they need times for them to take shelters, and then you may combine with the Wi-Fi and so on. These are the new elements of the urban street furnitures. And then the bollards, where it can be protrude according to times, and then in the morning it is blocked, and then during night time for the garbage truck to pass through to collect garbage and so on, it can run automatically. And then some areas, all these street furnitures must be durable. And then the facade of the building, which facade you want to maintain, the color you have to be consistent, the elements of the conservations, okay? And then all this you try to make it as much as possible to please the eyes. And this is the old Kuching. This is the old Kuching. I still have the pictures of it. This is the old bus stop area. It has become a very important district during that time. Okay, not forgetting all this, the boundaries and so on and so forth. and then your waterfront, and this is Carolina in Medan, one of the best, I consider one of the best, how they integrate the natural features of the area with the traditional architecture and then become one of the tourist attractions. Okay, in urban design issues, these are the issues that we have to consider. The circulations in terms of traffic networks, the pedestrian circulation, the vehicular circulation, the public transport, the services, vehicles like garbage truck and so on. And then the open space, how many percent of open space that you provide? Normally in Malaysia, we give 10% of the open space in each development area. And then do you think the 10% is enough? And then do remember the parking space, the bus terminal, the taxi stand. This one you cannot neglect, how to integrate that. And then you think about also the private cars that pass to and fro. And then the existing urban fabrics of these areas. The existing urban fabric that combine, that weave into like a basket that give life to the areas, that create a place making. Think about this. And then how to enhance the activities that has present in that area, how to complement with the new activities. Remember the limitation of the area in terms of zoning, in terms of boundary. The money you have, if you are given a certain amount of money by the city council to spend on the waterfront, you look at the capitals of the money, how much the capital they have, and then what are the policies that I mentioned earlier, the policy in terms of urban control. And as I mentioned to you, in some of the ambitious people like in England, they go for urban townscape movement. Yeah, this is what they do. Forget about this. They try to recapitulate the romantics of the old England. We can't do that. Yeah, we cannot do that. These are what I mentioned to you just now in terms of government, in terms of all this urban system. All right. These are the urban control. These are the underlying factors that you have to consider in terms of housing, employment, all this, and so and so forth. Yeah. And lastly, that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Zain.
Well, Julaihi, thank you very much for a very packed and informative lecture. I think now would be an appropriate time to take any questions that we might have from the audience. You can unmute yourself and ask directly or put a question in the chat. I'm sure that there are some questions that are on your mind after such a presentation. Yeah, any questions, please?
Please, if I cannot answer the question, I'll ask some other lecturers to answer the question. Okay, we have a lot of ideas from other lecturers. They are experts in landscape, experts in conservations, experts in engineering. Yeah? Please ask the question. We try to help you.
Prof, maybe I can present you a question if none are forthcoming from the audience. You were talking earlier in the lecture about the idea of the ownership of the street where sort of everyone, never mind. I will defer to a student, let the students ask. So McLeod has a question here for you, Prof, that says, with all the emphasis on creating an integrated urban space, the issue of gentrification in cities, for example, San Francisco, causes segregation of income groups. Should urban design foresee such issues so that the displacement of existing communities can be prevented? Yeah, so speaking about the issue of gentrification.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a very good question. I answered the question. Yeah, I was interested with gentrification when I was doing my urban design also. I did ask the question, the same question to my professor during that time. He said that you bear in mind, he said to me, bear in your mind that San Francisco was started after the San Francisco fire in late 80s and early 90s, twice. One is due to the earthquake, One is due to the fire, the blaze, the great blaze of San Francisco. San Francisco was the destinations of the hippies. Remember that. The hippies started in the 60s, and most of the hippies from Washington, D.C., yeah, and then most of the hippies, if you watch a movie, Forrest Gump, who watched the movie Forrest Gump by Tom Hanks? You watch the movie, a lot of people moving to San Francisco. San Francisco, the center of the hippies during that time. And then UC Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, was a place where the idea of liberalization and the idea of this, what they think about a modernization after the post-Vietnam War. And then most of these people, at that time, San Francisco was empty. Some of the buildings, if I'm not wrong, it's Julaihi Street. If I'm not mistaken, Julaihi Street, Gullarmard, Julaihi Street. Some of the buildings, not some, almost the whole block, run down. Some of the buildings almost dilapidated. And then these people move in. When they move in, these hippies, they don't have much money, so they repair the buildings. And then another good thing is that this gentrification is due to the utilization of space by artists. There are some artists, dancers, there are some painters, there are some sculptors. During that time, those people, they don't want to work. They want to do this kind of thing. I don't know where they get the money to eat. And then they improve the area. Another movie. Sorry, I used to watch movies. Another movie, The Flashdance. If you watch the movie Flashdance, that lady, he used the space at the old warehouse. He converted into a dance area for her to practice dancing. So due to this space being gentrified, and then more and more people move in, they improve, and then once they see the neighbor doing the improvement, then this unit improve, and suddenly at the peak of the 80s, San Francisco became one of the elite area. It was surprising. It was very surprising. From the dilapidated area, it became the elite area in San Francisco. If you go to San Francisco today, don't even think about moving or buying the property. And you look at the facade itself, you look at the street, you look at those people staying over that area. Most of these people are upper class people and no longer hippies. These are, however, when it comes to urban design, it grows by itself. It is not disturbed by the city council. This is what they are doing with the Marysville in Kansas. Marysville in Kansas, during my time in the 84, 85, we visited Marysville. It was dilapidated. Now Marysville is just like San Francisco in the late 60s, early 70s. It is almost just similar to San Francisco in the late 80s, become one of the elite area. It is not done by the urban designer. Even the city council, they are so thankful. They don't do much, but the people improve as a result of gentrifications. I hope they answer your questions. Yeah, I hope they answer your question. It did not happen in some other areas. If you look at San Francisco, you look at Marysville, these are the two examples you can look through. This is due to the initiative of the people themselves. And the city council, they just impose a certain regulation in terms of facade. Do not disturb this. In terms of a structure, you comply with that conservation. Okay?
Thank you, Prof.
Yes.
Maybe we can just take one last question before we end today. And it's also related, I think, to the issue of gentrification. It's from Hanis, who asks, if one area is taken to create urban design, how does it complement the surroundings? Because the area surrounding that urban design area might be of a low cost. So perhaps regarding the larger context of the urban design project.
Okay, thank you. This is the main focus of urban design. The main focus of urban design before we go into the development of this area. That's why we do the feasibility study also. We do the feasibility study, we combine with the planning principle. The planning principle, they have the data. The data in terms of demographic data, in terms of economic data, in terms of the zoning data. The urban planning principles we have to take into account also in our urban design. When you do all this, yeah, if you go back to the main issue that I mentioned earlier, we not simply go into Detroit. Sorry, then I give you the example of Detroit. You're not going simply go to Detroit. You want to revive the blocks in Detroit. Who's going to go there? Who's going to be brave enough to live there? Even a certain part of New Orleans, yeah? After the Katrina hurricane, the certain part of New Orleans, they try to revive not the Bourbon Street. The Bourbon Street is still intact. If you've been to Bourbon Street is a place where they have this Mardi Gras. Then from this Bourbon Street, the nearby street, they try to develop the area. They don't simply go to the Cajun area where the Cajuns are those people from France. They move to Louisiana. They call themselves the Cajun, and then they live in America. They speak French combined with Black English, and then they call themselves Cajun. And then they eat the Cajun food. Jambalaya is their main specialty. Yeah, there is jambalaya. There is something like fried rice, and then they don't go there. They have to look at the feasibility. If just in the middle of the dilapidated area you want to develop, it doesn't work. Remember that. That's the reason we do the feasibility study. We look at the zoning. We look at the economic factors. We look at the interconnectivity in terms of space syntax, in terms of path, laluan tadi. Kalau laluan itu break sampai 3 kilometers, baru you jumpa a new life, it doesn't work. Even in Medan, they want to develop that one area. Dr. Bambang, can you help me? What is the name of that place? The name of that street in Medan? It failed. You see? Although they introduced like Pasar Malam is on, after, if I'm not mistaken, after a year, the area is dead. Because there is no continuity in terms of path, there is no continuity in terms of activities. It must blend together. You cannot do it segregatedly. Yeah, remember that. Okay, Mr. Zain?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Talking about jambalaya and Cajun food is going to get everybody to start melele ayo. But I think we're getting some really good questions from the students here.
I cannot eat jambalaya. I cannot eat jambalaya because they put bacon inside.
Okay. I think due to the really lovely questions that we're getting here from the students, maybe we'll just take one final one, yeah, from Julaihi, who asks, does the importance of tourism in an area affect the urban design more than the importance of the local residents? For example, the locals of Sarawak near Gunung Santubong were resistant to the development of the mountain for tourism purposes. However, it could be argued that the development of the area in terms of urban design based on the need for tourism would help the locals. So what is the main priority in this case or in these cases?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I was involved with the master plan for Santubong. Yeah, I did some contribution in terms of the master plan requested by the SEDC. And I don't agree with what they are trying to propose, but in a way, we cannot avoid development. Yeah. However, as an architect or as an urban designer, how you complement the physical development to create a physical environment with the natural environment. The natural environment of Santubong is rich with the tropical rainforest. And then how you going to combine the physical development so that it balance in terms of physical and natural. It have not only happened in Sarawak, it happened in Italy, it happens in Savannah, Georgia. The people of Savannah, Georgia, fed up with the tourists. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Zain, you check again. You know, I was told by Professor Ray Weissenberger when he told me that he visited Savannah during the last summer. He said before he passed away, and then he said the people even protest that the area become the tourist center. The same with in Virginia, Jamestown in Virginia, some of the people reject the idea of museumifications of Jamestown for the tourists. So the same thing with some other areas in Italy also. Yeah, there is one town in Spain. Yeah, and also in Italy, they reject the tourism industry. They don't agree at all. But to the government, to the city council, this is money. When the people come in, they pay for the air ticket. The government get the tax from the air ticket. That's why the underlying structure that I mentioned earlier, the tax the government get. And then they go from the airport to the place. They took taxi. It creates employment. The taxi driver buy the gas. It benefit Petronas. It's some sort like a vicious circle. You see, like a vicious circle. It affects almost everyone. And then this is what we call trickle-down economy. In the economic terms, we call trickle-down economy. The trickle-down economy, it benefits even the people jual kuih di tepi jalan, orang jual air di tepi jalan. They benefit the advantage from tourists. However, the tourists also did something else, you see. They ruin the culture, overuse of the areas like in Mecca, some of the area already, the people intrude and so on. The Arabs also try to stop the people moving inside a certain area of Mecca. So, Holy City, what more to say? In Italy, in Spain, in Savannah, Georgia. Then, are you going to go for total? That's why I said to you, which approach that you go for? Redevelopment, revitalization, or you go for some conservation approach? Totally, you're not going to go for renewal, and you're not going to displace the people in Santubong. However, yeah, we have to consider all those factors just now I had mentioned. Sarawak cannot be left behind because the people of Sarawak, oh, you said Semenanjung membangun, kita di Sarawak masih macam ni, because there are a group of people who reject development. Do you want to do that? There are people who reject development. Yeah, those people don't agree. So the people blame the government. They say that they ruin the natural environment. These are the things that you have to consider. I hope, Anis, I answer your question. Yeah, you make me feel guilty because I involved with the SEDC master plan.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that answer, Prof. I think maybe
thank you, sir.
we need to wrap things up here. I think the questions that we received were all sort of having to do with the role of the architect as an agent of development. And certainly we cannot see ourselves just blindly in service of the client in issues of urban design, where the users of the site or the owners of the site, as Prof. Julaihi said at the beginning of his lecture, include all the strangers of the city. And so it's a delicate balance between doing what our client requests of us and advising the client on what is the best way to move forward to balance everyone's interests. So thank you very much for that, Prof. I think we will end our AD talk for today. Puan Donna, I'm sure we'll have more speakers lined up as we move through the semester. So I would just like to repeat that our AD talk here is not just for our own students, but is open to anyone from outside who is interested to join. And so I notice we have Dr. Norlisa Gidling joining us here today. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see many more faces from outside UNIMAS for our AD talks in the future as well. So with that, I'd like to end our session for today. Thank you all for your participation, and we'll see you at our next AD talk in the future. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone.